spend way too much time with individuals, with sellers that actually have almost zero intention of selling unless they get their magical price. I was literally on the phone today with a guy who responded when I said, hey, would you be totally against selling your property? He said, yes, I'll be open to the idea of selling. He wanted $15 to $18 million was his exact words, okay? 15 to 18 million, which is a crazy range, by the way. I don't know who would ever say a range of $3 million when they're asking for a sales price. And then I looked, and he bought the property for $1.5 million just a couple of years ago. And I'm going to be honest with you guys, this property was worth nowhere near $15 million. I'd literally sell my entire portfolio for a price per square foot that this guy was asking. So I was like, absolutely not. So these are the types of opportunities where too many people are spending too much time on them. And I want to give you my quick how to vet out these seller leads so you don't spend time with people who are not that motivated. And it has to do with understanding starter offers versus broker opinions of value, because so many people are like, oh, just like this individual, we'll call him Bob as an example. Bob said 15 million. The last thing I would ever do is go out and give Bob a broker opinion of value. What am I going to show him? A bunch of comps that his property is only worth, $2 to $3 million bucks, maybe at most. I mean, honest to God, I think his property is probably close to, $1.5 million to what he paid for it, 4 or 5 years ago. I think it's probably worth somewhere near there, okay? So the fact that he's even at a $15 million number, we need to read between the lines here. Clearly, he's just not that motivated. And if you were to send him a broker opinion of value of all these different comps in the market, who cares? The guy's not interested in selling. It's not like he goes, yeah, I mean, look, we've been thinking about selling. We're interested in selling. This is something that we planned on doing anyways. I appreciate you reaching out. It's not like the conversation went that positively. It was just one of those things of, hey, if you got me by, my right number, my magic number, I'd consider it. So what's important here is to say, okay, what else can we be doing in this moment? How else can we begin the negotiation process? How else can we look at this deal? What lens can we look at this deal through where maybe we can figure out what's going on? Now, obviously, the example I gave you with Bob and wanting 15 million bucks when it's only worth $1.5 million, that 10x difference is not the usual. Typically, what will even happen is the seller says, yeah, I'm open to the idea of selling. I want 3 million and I think it's worth maybe $1.5 million. And most people will still send them broker price opinions. So what I do differently than the corporate America thinking brokers is that I'm sending them a starter offer right away. I'm already going to start negotiating this deal immediately, because what I'm trying to do is gauge the motivation of this individual. I don't need to just send them comps. Comps don't really do a heck of a lot, because in their mind, all you're doing, if you just send them a bunch of comps saying, hey, I think your property's worth in this range, you can do that in addition to sending an offer. But most of the time, these people want to see an offer. Every single time you talk to somebody, hey, would you be totally against selling? They're all like, okay, yeah, give me an offer. Every time we hear this. This happens all the freaking time. And when you say, well, look, I'm a broker. Let me send you some comps. These people aren't stupid. Right? They probably have a broker who brought them the deal. If they wanted comps for their property, they can literally call up the broker who found them the deal, and they can get comps for any property. So I'm talking about, how do you start the conversation on a different note? How do you start off the conversation after you got all the information from them, right? Just like you would as a broker, collecting data and information on their property. And then I like to submit an offer on the property. We do this all verbally, and we verbalize an offer to them. Okay, we don't put it in writing until they request it. But for specifically the first offer, every offer after the very first verbal offer, we'll put into a letter of intent format and we'll send it over. Obviously, we'll include things like proof of funds or a term sheet if required, if they ask for it, but we don't need it. So what's important is to shift the mindset, where every time you get a lead now, I want you to think about it. The next conversation you have with them, okay, is going to be about verbalizing an offer of some sort to them. Now, some of you are going to be like, well, I don't have a buyer. Well, that's a fair statement. And a lot of the times, most people wouldn't have a buyer for every type of asset class either, or every type of property. But what you can do is that if you learn how to underwrite, if you learn and you spend the time and you invest in your education around underwriting and you master the art of underwriting properties, even if you only have a little bit of information, you can evaluate assets based on what they currently could be valued at, based on what you're going to receive information-wise. And you will be able to submit an offer. Just like, look, Ben Mallah was just even on the Iced Coffee Hour with Graham Stephan, and he talks about how he's lowballing all these different owners. Okay, and obviously he goes after actively listed properties. We do the same thing, but off market. So we're direct to seller, direct to buyer, and to pre-negotiate, we send over and verbalize an offer. If Ben Mallah, a beast of an investor, he's the absolute man. I love his content. It's like, if this guy's doing it, don't you think every investor in the marketplace is probably doing the same thing? Like, so if Blackstone gave you a call or Ben gave you a call and said, hey, I know the property you have listed is at 10 million, but I want to offer $6.5 million, would you not write it up? The answer is you would 100% of the time. But all I'm suggesting is you do it without the necessary requirement of having Ben or Blackstone or whoever you're speaking with, these investors, right, actually telling you that they would offer that number. Because if you know how to evaluate property and you know that it's worth around 6.5, 7, 7.5, 8 million bucks, in this example, submitting an offer at 6 million bucks and verbalizing an offer at 6 million, knowing full and well that I can get an offer for 6.5, 7, 7.5, 8, that's where the magic is. Because what I'm going to do is I'm pre-negotiating with this seller to vet out the people who are not that interested. Because if I offer this guy 6 million, knowing that I can get 6.5, 7 from an investor, and this guy says, I'm absolutely not interested in selling at anything less than 10 million. Don't call me back unless you have 10 million. Here's the thing. If you try to go down the path with this individual, whether you're sending them broker price, opinion of values, the appraisal strategy, whatever you want to call it, if you do that, you're going down a path with an investor, with a seller, going down a path with a seller who's just not that motivated if you read between the lines. It's like we're like faking the idea of like, oh my God, I have this amazing client. I have this amazing opportunity. That's not what this is about. What this is about is understanding when you actually have a good opportunity in front of you. And the only way to know is when you know the intrinsic value of this asset, you know roughly where a buyer would pay, and trying to get the best deal possible where you'll transact, right? That's what we want. We want to be able to transact on these pieces of real estate. And I don't care, like we just had an agent of ours come across a deal for $160 million, okay? $160 million portfolio. He's a 20-something-year-old kid, a powerhouse of a guy. And he finds this opportunity for $160 million. Seller says, I want $160 million bucks. And guess what? Normal brokers would be like ecstatic beyond belief. Oh my God, honey, I just got this opportunity, $160 million. I'm going to be rich. Oh my goodness, right? Like, beating their chest, thinking that they got this amazing opportunity. But guess what? We know these types of asset classes well. We knew the intrinsic value was roughly somewhere between 100 and 120 million. They had $100 million worth of debt. Okay. They were trying to sell this portfolio for like a 5 cap, and it was a lot of office. Okay. 160 was like a 5 cap. For a lot of office and a little bit of retail. And guess what? We knew a couple of buyers in the marketplace who would be interested in this type of asset class. And every conversation we had with them, they wanted to make an offer between $105 and $115 million. Okay. So what happens in these circumstances, obviously, my agent, who's, incredibly well trained, has been with us for a long time, follows our approach. As soon as he got it, he's like, listen, I know this is overpriced. I actually already had a conversation with one of our buyers. They wanted to come in at an offer of 105 to start. And I was like, fantastic. Let's rip an offer at 105. Let's, add a 5 or 6% commission. Doesn't really matter. And let's send it and let's see what happens. Because all we're trying to do is start the negotiation process and see, is this an actual opportunity, a real opportunity or not? Because if it's not a real opportunity, I don't need to spend much time with this guy, right? We're trying to filter out the crap, right? I'm trying to filter out the sellers who have actually no interest in selling. So what that allows us to do is that allows us to be nimble in the marketplace. Because while all these other brokers are spending unreasonable amount of time with sellers who aren't actually true sellers, we are bobbing and weaving and moving through the environment of sellers, right? All these opportunities that are all around us, and I'm just going to hold on to those real sellers. Because if it's a real seller, you can take a listing and sell it. You could do an off-market deal and sell it. You could raise money to buy the deal, or you could wholesale it and make money. But if there's not a clear path to success and there's not a clear path to a transaction, I don't need to spend endless amounts of time figuring that out. All I'm trying to support you guys in looking at is how can I go from first conversation with the seller to understanding and recognizing, is this something that's going to transact or not? And I want to do that as fast as freaking possible.